All right. I'm gonna give this like 2 seconds because I like to wait until my screen sync up and I can make sure that I am actually showing. But I think we are good to go. All right, so basically I'm gonna go through everything that I know about how to make thumbnails in Canva specific to YouTube. And this is gonna give you all the new features and all the main things that you wanna do this year, especially because it's just changed vastly. It's gotten a lot easier. I have the pro plan in Canva. I do not have an affiliate link. I wish I did. I actually searched beforehand and I would have to apply and all that stuff. I just use Canva because I love it. I pay, I think it's like 15 bucks a month. Totally worth it. So that's my heartfelt recommendation there. I'm going to go through how to create thumbnails, what makes a good thumbnail, all that fun stuff. We're going to do a demo thumbnail. I'm going to tell you everything I learned. Now, I do not have a graphic design background. So when it comes to using software like this, it's not like I have some kind of like deep training or anything like that. Canva is pretty easy to pick up. I'm just going to show you all the stuff that I've learned over the past like 2-ish years of using it for everything from thumbnails for YouTube to documents, PDFs, lead magnets, all that stuff. But we're going to focus on thumbnails for YouTube. So I got this cool little document for us, and I'm going to go ahead and hop into it. And so periodically, we're gonna like look at a couple different things that I've got. We're pretty much gonna just start out going through our little example here of making a, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit and make this a little bit bigger. So if I zoom in, make it easy for you to see. So this might be about an hour. I'm gonna try to keep it pretty quick, but I might go into a little bit of detail here. So let me know, feel free to answer or to ask questions in the chat and I will answer them as best I can. This might be about an hour. I'm gonna try to keep it to half an hour, so it should be in between those two things. We are going to make together a thumbnail for a video titled How Apple Captured the Market. So regardless of where you are in terms of your channel, what kind of things that you create, frequently people do case studies. So this is kind of like the title for a case study, and we're gonna do a thumbnail for a case study. Now there are a bunch of different types of videos, and I'm not gonna get into all of them. You have like before and after and transformation videos. You have list videos, you have reactions. This is gonna be a pretty good thumbnail that you can use everything we are gonna talk about for any of those, although your actual structure and the look of the thumbnail might be a little different. So first things first, let's hop into Canva. Now I have a folder here. And so if I go to home, then I'm not gonna go there because I have a ton of client folders and I don't want you to see their stuff. I try to keep that just kind of under wraps. And just because I haven't cleared it with them to share that. So I'm not going to worry about it. But you can see this is a folder specific to my channel called Steve Kolak Channel Engine. And you can see I've got a couple different documents here. Now what you'll notice, if you've looked at any of my videos, I have more than 6 videos, but there are only 6 documents here. What I like and what I recommend is that you just have one document for your thumbnails. And if you want to, every month, every year, whatever it is, clear that out and then have a brand new document just because, this one probably has almost 200, yeah, it has 198 thumbnails in it right now that you can see if I hover over, it'll go through the iterations of a couple. If you want to clear that out and create a new one, that's fine. I think it's handy because as I keep creating thumbnails and figuring out which one to work really well, I can just go back to this document and I'm starting there and I just copy the previous thumbnail that I really liked in, and then I've got all the elements in there and I'm just gonna make some tweaks. But for you, we are gonna do this from scratch. So I'm gonna hit add new. And because I'm in the folder I wanna be in, I'm not gonna add a folder, I'm gonna add a new design. Click that little arrow there. I'm gonna say create new. And I'm gonna go to YouTube. And YouTube thumbnail is what I'll select here. So nice and easy. And then you see we are left with a blank page. Now there are tons of templates in here. And I generally don't recommend using these templates because look at how busy they are. So, and I can't say this for all of them, but when I look through here, so many of these are busy. This is probably one of the least busy, and this is pretty decent. But if you go to YouTube, for example, and you look at, this, so I've got, let me make sure I'm zoomed in well enough here. So I've got vidIQ, which I do recommend as well, but it's not as high priority as like Canva. And this will tell me how many views per hour a video has, and then also the outlier score. So compared to the other videos on this channel, this one gets 7.1 times as many views. So I can see that this thumbnail is obviously pretty successful because it gets 56 views per hour, 7.1 times as many views for this channel compared to their other stuff. This other one right next to it, which is like the thumbnail is just a screenshot. They're getting 20 views per hour, and it's a 1.5 times outlier. And then if I scroll through, now obviously my channel feed is geared more toward YouTube and that sort of thing. Or apparently this weird one right here, but you can see that I will be able to look at just again, all these types of videos. I see which ones are really popular. They don't tend to be as busy. This is probably one of the busier ones just because it's again another screenshot with some text over it. But most of these, it's a screenshot and some text, or a very simple background and some text. Like this one doesn't even have any text, and again, it's 64 views per hour, 4.3 times. So you don't want to make it complex. I mean, this is another good one, 40 views per hour, over 100 times more views on average than this person usually gets. So you just want to look through here and look for video concept or thumbnail concepts that resonate with you and keep it simple. So what I'm going to show you is very simple and straightforward, but also how to do anything you want so you don't have to worry about if you come up with, oh, I really want this kind of look. Like for here, I'm not sure how to, let's say you weren't sure how to make this divided look with this shadow. I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to go through and we will do a simple thumbnail based on the idea. So we're just going to delete all this. I'm just going to undo that. We're going to start from scratch here instead of using a template, and we are going to use that idea of how Apple captured the market. All right, so I'm going to start with my background, which if I just click here, the background is already there. I'm going to go ahead with a dark color. Now, another thing that I've been liking lately is actually using a somewhat lighter color. So let's go with this sapphire blue. And then I'm going to actually put a slightly darker background on the edges. So you could just go full on black, but let's say you want to add a little bit more effect and still have something that stands out there. We're going to add some blue blur. So I'm going to go to elements and I'm going to search, and I think you can see pretty well. Let me just make sure I'm zoomed. I'm zooming in as much as I can without making things cluttered, hopefully. So if I go to this, I have it in recent searches, this black blur. Let's do that. And you do have to specify the color on this. I can find all of these different graphics. So I could go through here and I could select graphics, photos, frames, and I'm not going to get into what all of those are right this second, but graphics are what I want. And that just means that it's not an image, like a photorealistic image. And I'm going to go ahead and click that. And then I'm going to click this one here, and you can see if I add this on the bottom, it doesn't quite fit. So I can make sure that it fits a couple of different ways. What I'm going to do is drag this across. So now if I click out of it, I can see the bottom is a little bit shadowed. Now, if I wanted this to go up higher, so let's say I wanted it to start halfway through, I could drag down like this, and it would do something very similar. And now let's say I want it on the top as well. So what I'll do is I will hit Control C or Command C, or I can just go up here and hit copy. So I'll hit copy. And then if I hit Control V or I paste it, it's going to paste in the same position, but then I can go right here to flip. Let me move my little picture. I'll move my picture down here. Hopefully I'll be out of the way. But I can go right here to flip, and I can just flip it vertical, and then I would have the mirror image right on top, and I can move it around if I want. If I wanted it to be, not as prominent at the top, then I could do that. And similarly, if I, for some reason, wanted it kind of like only to go halfway across, I could pull this in, but that just breaks the image up immediately. So generally you don't want to do that. There are just certain circumstances. All right, cool. So now I've gotten that put in place. I'm going to leave it as is. I could also flip it horizontally, but here, because it's symmetrical, it doesn't really matter. So I'm not going to do that. Okay, so for now, let's say I like this. So this is going to do two things. One, so right now I'm looking at YouTube, and my background is white, so black stands out. But if I go to, and I have to remember this, if I go to settings, I think in Chrome here, and then I go to appearance, I can go to mode. Let me zoom in. I can go to mode, and right now my mode is on light. If I switch it to dark, then it's going to be a dark background, and then I'm going to refresh YouTube. YouTube inherits that, so now it's a dark background. So I want to keep in mind that if if someone's looking at my video and it's on a light background or a dark background, I want it to stand out. So that's why I want to just kind of compare and see whether or not my background is something that's going to stand out when I create it. Right here, I have the black around the edges, but I do have that blue in the middle. So that should stand out a little bit better than if I'm just looking at, let's say, a background like this, where I was just black across the side. So that's one of the first things we want, is you want to keep in mind all the other kind of thumbnails that you see on the page. Look for what's really useful, but if it's something that isn't going to stand out on a lighter or light or dark background, you might want to consider just how you're going to make sure your thumbnail actually stands out pretty well. So like here, for example, Alex Hormozy's Hormozy highlights, they've got a dark background, but a white table. He's wearing a white tank top. She's wearing a lighter colored, I think that's his wife Layla. She's wearing something that's lighter colored. Here you've got a light background, but it has a chart on it, so it's still going to stand out even in a light instance. So you've got a couple different ways that you can, again, like factor that in. You just want to bear in mind whether or not the background is light or dark, you want to show up. All right, cool. So let's get into it now. And you can see, because I changed my system settings, all of this stuff changed as well. I'm gonna go ahead and make it lighter now because I feel like for most of us, that'll just be easier. All right, so this is back to light. So we could also do a gradient from the background. So if I were to click in here, and then if I want to click on the background, now that I've covered it up, I can go to position, and then I can go to layers. And because the background is underneath, I have to actually click it here. Now, if I want to make this background a gradient instead, there are default gradient colors under here. I could go to see all and I could pick one. I don't like that as much personally, but you can explore that as well. Both are really good ways to do it. Now, let's go ahead and hop into uploading things, because you want to put something on there. So generally with YouTube, if you're trying to create some kind of authority channel and you have one main like presenter or host, or that's what I would consider myself for this channel, then you actually want to upload a photo of that person. And it could even be your screenshot if you're just doing a screenshot and you're placing text over it. But you do want to have a picture of that person, because you want people to associate them with the channel, and then over time they begin to see the thumbnail, they see that person's face, and they're more likely to click because they know that person and they like it. They like the content that that person makes. So you're going to want to know how to upload things. It's really, really easy, pretty standard for a lot of this, but you can go into, when you're on your design, you can go into uploads over here. You can click something. The other way you can do it is you can just drag. So let's see. Let me open up a little screenshot and see what we can drag. So for example, I have this chart and I'm just gonna grab it from here, from my Finder. So if I have this chart and I just want to grab this image and put it in here from Finder where all my images are, I can just drag it in and it'll upload as well. Now, when it's uploaded, it's going to go over here to uploads. And then and you can see things that I've uploaded in the past, screenshots. By the way, I did not make these thumbnails. I was screenshotting them. Just to be clear, I do not work with Ali Abdaal. Would love to, but don't want you to get some impressions there. If I wanted to move this to a folder, I could click on the check mark, or if I could click on the check mark of a bunch to move a bunch at a time, or I could just click here and I can hit move and then move it to a folder. So if I'm uploading images of myself that I want to put on that because I want to point to a chart or something, then I like to keep those images in a folder so they're easy to find. Otherwise I have to scroll through a bunch of different uploads. And I would make sure that I put that upload of myself into that folder. So for example, here, I'm going to leave it as is because we don't need to put it into a folder, but let's say that this was data. You can see this is actually data on someone's channel who I'm going to do a video on shortly. Let's say this was data on Apple. So going back to our theme of how Apple captured the market, which I'm going to go ahead and copy that title, and I'm just going to put it into here. Oops. There we go. I'm going to delete it from there for now. And then I wanted to go ahead and insert myself because I'm the one talking about this. Let's say this chart has something to do with Apple capturing a market. This does not, but for the sake of our argument here, let's go ahead and put it in there. Then I want to go to uploads and I'm already there. I'm going to go to folders. And like I said, I already have me in here. So I'm going to go to me. I have a bunch of images. Some are AI generated, a lot are not. And I'm just going to pick one. So if I have this blue background and this black background, I want something lighter. I found the gray works really well. So I could use something like this. Let's say I want to use a lot of emotion generally. Depending upon your audience, you may want to use a lot of emotion. In some audiences, that's actually going to be unprofessional and not a good idea. But let's say I wanted a lot of emotion for this one. Then I could use a photo like this, and you'll notice I have this, I'm overlapped right now with the image. So I can do two things. One, I can click on the image that I already had, this little chart, and instead of this animate here, I would click this little 3 dots and go to position. So remember how we did this before when we were looking to see just how to like change the gradient background, but we couldn't get to the background because it was underneath. Well, in this case, this image is underneath, but I want it to be over top of the photo of me and my elbow. So I would go ahead and I could move either the photo down. Yeah, Kim has been doing this lately for all my like compliments on it the last 2 or 3 times that I've been here. There we go. I can move the image of myself down underneath like I just did, or I could move the image of the chart over top. Either way is going to work. And now all of a sudden, instead of my elbow and everything covering this chart is out in front. Now, generally speaking, I think a chart like this is a little bit too busy to take up a lot of space. To take up a lot of space in the foreground. Let me actually shut off that alarm so it doesn't interrupt us. All right, hopefully that'll work. So generally speaking, I don't like a chart like this taking up a lot of space in the foreground. I might have it in the background, and this is pretty busy for me. So let's say I only wanted this view of the chart. You see what we just did there? We did the same thing that we were doing earlier on the that background fade and I'm just going to hit undo, where I pulled this. And if I were, so the image itself, let's say it starts out at that height. If I pull this down from any side, it'll just crunch in, it'll crop it. I'm going to hit undo. So Control Z, Command Z. Now, if on the other hand, I want to make this image larger, but only in one dimension, then let's say I want to make it larger horizontally. I want to zoom in. I'm just going to do that. And it's going to go across, but it's going to zoom in. It's going to stay to that vertical height that it already lives in. I'm going to hit undo again. And then again, if I want to do that vertically, same thing. I could zoom in and I'm going to hit undo again. And then if I want to make the entire thing either smaller or larger, I can use the corner. All right, I'm gonna hit undo again. And now I am gonna crunch it down because let's say I only want this little bit of it. And let's say I do wanna make this bit that I just cropped larger. And now let's say I want to put this in the background, because again, like I said with that chart, I like having charts in the background sometimes. So I'm going to go back to animate. I'm going to go back to position, and I'm going to go back to layers. And now this time I want to move it so it's below me, or behind me rather. So there, I move myself in front. Now we have a little problem with my elbows. This is cropped already and it looks really, really bad. So I have to figure out what I want there. There are a couple solutions that I could use. One is I could have text in front and that text could have a background. Another one is I could potentially just make this so large that it no longer is a factor and my elbow automatically goes off. But then that's like me basically trying to eat the camera and it's way too large. So I don't like that one either. So let's go back to undoing it. And another solution, an option that we have, I am going to make this slightly different, is I'm going to have, let's say, a logo or text over this. So let's go ahead and search for Apple. Excuse me there. All right, so let's go ahead and go to, I don't want that. Scroll up to uploads, we'll go to elements. And I'm going to search for Apple logo. And I can see a bunch of different Apple logos here. And then notice that I've got graphics selected. If I X out of graphics, then I could go to photos, for example. It's not really going to show me the logo, I don't think, with that, but I can see photos of apples. But if I go back to graphics, that's what I actually want, because that's going to be a lot more similar. Now, frames is something different that we'll kind of talk about a little bit, but you don't really need to know it for the most part. There's like 2-3 use cases where you want to know it. All right, so let's go to graphics. I think this one looks the best. So this is probably a probably a legally compliant, non-official, not quite looking like the actual company logo. So let's go ahead and make that a different color. So let's say we want it blue. We could do that. We click on this little button up here, and this is going to give us the color. If we wanted to have border. Now the border is not going to be around just the item itself. So the item is obviously in this case the shape of an apple. It's going to be like a square around the image. So if I put this border in, and then let's just make it 20 to make it really obvious, you can see that it's around this entire square. And I'm just going to change the color. I can change the color as well. So let's change the color to this light gray just so you can see it. So the border is around the entire square. Now, you almost never want that. I generally, if I want a border around something, it's pretty rare. But let's say I did, and let's say I wanted the corners rounded to make it, a little bit softer. I could do that. I could round them all the way to 100 pixels in, but it's not going to give me a circle. So if you're familiar with like HTML and stuff like that, it's not like 100%, it's 100 pixels. All right, but I don't want this this border. I don't want anything like that. So I'm just going to X out. And this apple right here, it doesn't really fit with what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and change the color. And let's go with a gray. We'll pick this gray. And you'll notice it still doesn't really stand out. And it looks a little bit too gray. There's gray on my shirt. So let's swap this picture out so it's not gray. Let's make this picture a little bit brighter. And I'm going to go back to uploads. I'm going to go back to me, and instead of this highly emotional one, let's find one where I'm wearing a red shirt. Let's do this one. So I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to hit this BG remover to remove the background. So this is really cool because that way, and this was, by the way, created with Gemini. What I did is I took a real picture of me, and then I asked it to, let me zoom in. You use the photo I uploaded to create several YouTube thumbnails with various poses. And then I listed out the poses, things like crossed armed and looking confident, looking surprised, looking upset, looking shocked. And then you can see it provided all these different ones. And then I asked it to have me pointing and all this sort of thing. So I think this isn't where I got the red image that I just showed you, but I can remove the background. It takes about a second. And now I can do the same thing that we did earlier. Now my elbow is not the problem, but I can just make this massive and position myself however I want. Will not show my receding hairline, so that'll make me feel good. And then as far as this goes, now this image, because I made it so large, it extends way beyond the page, but I don't actually need any of that space. So I can just move this in, and I can just move this bottom portion up, because none of this is actually visible on the thumbnail. All right. And then I'm gonna go ahead, so this background of the apple, like I said, this gray really doesn't stand out. So I'm gonna give it something that is gonna make it stand out a little bit more. I'm gonna give it a little black background. Now what I like to do, if I want a black background on a really weird shape like that, is I will copy, so I'm gonna Control C, and then I'm gonna paste, Control V. I'm gonna copy another one, and then I'm gonna make it slightly bigger. So first I'm gonna start by changing the color, just so I can see it and tell which is which. And let's go ahead and make it a yellow, just so it completely stands out. And then I'm gonna make it slightly bigger than the one underneath. That's a little bit more than slightly, so let's make it a little smaller. And now I'm gonna mess with the position, and I'm gonna put this yellow one below the other. All right, so this is one way that I can make it stand out. This yellow isn't particularly good, so let's go back and let's just change that. So instead of being a yellow, maybe we'll do like a nice bright red. And then maybe I'll lighten this one up so it's a lighter gray. So I can do something like this. And then if I click on the top one, which is now that lighter gray, I can use my arrow keys. So I can just use the arrow keys on the keyboard, and I can move rather than having to drag and move it that way. If I use the arrow keys, it'll move little bits of space. You can kind of like see it moving. If I hit like shift, it'll move in bigger chunks. And I think command, or sorry, I think it's option. No, I think it's like shift and then command shift. Command shift increases the size, but if I just do shift, it's gonna go ahead and just move it left or right more than, I think it's like 10 pixels instead of the 1 pixel. So I could do something like that, and that makes it stand out a little bit. I still don't really love that, so I'm gonna go ahead and probably shrink the red a little bit, move this, oops, let's hit undo, move the one on top a little bit, and let's see if I go ahead with, let's find another good color. Yeah, let's stick with white, and then I'm gonna make that red one a little more prominent. I'm gonna use a darker red. So I'll position here, and then let's go to, instead of just the default solid colors, I'm gonna go to See All, and then I'm gonna pick this deeper, darker red, and then now I'll go back to position. I've got it selected. So I can increase the size, and I can move it around. That's okay. I still don't love it, so I'm gonna be honest. So here's what I always do if I don't love something, but I'm like, I might wanna come back to this. I hit this button right here, and I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. I hit this button right here, let's just clear that out. And this allows me to duplicate the page. So that means that I'll duplicate it, and I can mess with this second one. And if I mess something up and I'm like, you know what, I do wanna go back to the first one, I can do that. So let's go ahead, I'm gonna remove, for now I'm just gonna remove that apple, and I'm gonna change this one to the dark red. Yeah, I feel like I gotta stick with red for now. All right, so for now, I'm just gonna delete it. So I just showed you how to create it and destroy it if you want. And right now I am just, again, with what I've got selected, tightening these little spots. And I'm going to add some text. So I'm gonna go to text. Now, if you click add a heading, or add a subheader or just add a little bit of body text. It doesn't really matter which you pick. You're going to be able to pick whatever font styles and font sizes and all that stuff that you want. So I'm just going to click add a heading, and I'm going to go ahead and put in, let's see, what was our topic? So our topic was how Apple captured the market. So I'm going to put in thumbnail text. So that's going to be our like title. Thumbnail text. What's some good thumbnail text? So let's say Apple captured the market. It should be either surprising or the answer that we need to figure out the journey to. So if it's surprising, we could say defiant conformism. Let's see. How Apple captured the market. Because essentially what they did is they were like, oh, we're different. That was like a huge thing in the 90s, and I think that's when it kicked off. 90s are like early 2000s. So I'm going to go ahead and say like thumbnail text, instead of just defiance, let's say something else. Let's look for a good marketing campaign that they used. How about that? Apple marketing slogan. Think different. All right, so let's just go with that. And what we're going to do, I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to add a question mark. And the reason I'm adding a question mark is, for now at least, we're going to prompt the person to wonder if this is correct or if this is an accurate description of what they did. So right now you can see that the text itself does not stand out at all. Canvas Sans, by the way, not exactly a good font. I don't recommend using Canvas Sans. So I always go for, you can see it's got a bunch of like recommended fonts. You can check out any of them. I haven't played with Cooper Hewitt. Basically, if I go with any kind of like thin condensed font like Cooper Hewitt looks like, I always make it bold. And then what I like to do is make it pretty large. Frequently, I like to have 2 different lines, and I will even use 2 different fonts. What I've found really helps with click-through rate is actually to have one of the words on your thumbnail, if you have any words on it, with a yellow background. I've seen other people use the yellow word. I tend to like a yellow background. And in order to do that, I am going to have 2 different text blocks, and that's going to allow me to control have different fonts for them, and also have different sizes and all of that. So instead of being camel case, I'm going to make this all caps. All caps seems to do really well for me as well. So that's why I'm doing it. So we're going to go into effects. There are a couple that are really good. I like lift, and that's pretty good if there's a good discrepancy between the background and the text itself. But outline works even better if there's not a big difference between the text itself and the background. So for example, right here, I might do outline, and then I can do the outline in white. I can do it in black, in which case I want the text to be in white. So something like that. And to me, usually that doesn't stand out quite enough. So instead of just having think different in white here, so let me go ahead, I'm going to copy think, and I'm going to put different, and I'm going to do a different kind of text, and I'm going to do a different kind of background, because I'm going to show you something. So if I do think different, which annoys me because it's not proper grammar. Well, I guess it could be proper grammar. I'm thinking it's supposed to mean think differently though. Then if I go to effects, this is another one that I found really, really good. Again, if you're doing any kind of titles where you've got, let's say 2 to 4 words, I wouldn't really do, I like 2 to 3 word titles. It seems to me like sometimes the fewer the words, the better. So if I take that roundness down, actually before I even do that, I'm gonna go back to 50, what it started out with. So right now the background is black. If I click on this, I'm gonna go ahead and change that by clicking this color down here. I really like, so instead of this really bright yellow, actually that yellow is pretty good. I like a slightly duller yellow. And this is pretty good. So I'm gonna keep it like that, but I don't like it rounded at all. And I don't like it to be that spread out. So I usually pull it in pretty far. And then to get the spread I want on the sides, I just add a space before and after. And now, because of the color of my background, I want the text color to be black. So now that stands out a whole lot more. So we could be done with this thumbnail essentially, right? Because right now, if I'm looking back, so let's say I'm looking at either of these, you can see both from pretty far away. And that's kind of like the test you want to do. Let me move my little dumb head. Let me move my little dumb head so you can see. So I want to move either one, and whatever my thumbnail is, I want to look at it and be able to think that there's something intriguing that I can see right away, just at a first glance. So here, I want to make some adjustments. And by the way, to move in and out, you can use this little thing down here. You can also do Command or Control and then scroll on the mouse. So if you scroll away from you, or depending on how you have the mouse oriented, if you scroll away from you, that's going to make it smaller. You scroll toward you, that makes it bigger. So I don't like how that's positioned, but that's not bad. And then think different. I think that's helpful here. I like it there. But now I have a problem because the background, that like text, is a little bit too high. So I'm going to pull that down, and at the same time, I'm going to make this bigger. I'm also going to draw it in a little bit. And let's see if I center that. So to me, that's pretty intriguing, right? Because I have some kind of chart in the background. I'm showing something. So again, we're pretending that this is like a chart of growth. So I'm showing something, but it's not really clear what, but we know it's important. Think different. That's like apparently one of Apple's marketing campaigns. And I can have the text relatively centered. And all of this stands out really well. I look confident. Well, honestly, I don't know that I look confident in this, but like this picture projects some amount of confidence. So we could keep that picture, or let's say we just wanted to have Apple, which again, I don't usually recommend, but let's say we just want to have Apple. Let me copy this stuff from here. I'm gonna come up to here, I'm gonna click position. And now if I want to copy both of these things, or if I want to move them together, let me move my little head. So I can hold down Command or Shift. So if I hold down Shift and I'm already selected on this one, if I hold Shift and I click on the one down here, it selects all in between. If instead I'm selected this one already and I click down here while holding Command or Control, then it just selects the one that I had selected and what I had clicked. So because these two are right next to each other, I can just select both either way. I can copy them. I can also, you see this little button here that says group. I could group them together, and then I would be able to just move them as one, resize them as one. I'm going to group them for the sake of this, and then I can always ungroup later on. Don't worry. And if I want to ungroup, there's another way I could do it. I could use this menu, and I'm actually going to copy this. So I'm going to copy the grouped element, and I'm going to copy the grouped element, and I'm going to move it here and paste it. And I have think different, and I have Apple right here. So I could also do something like that. Now, again, because there's not a person in there, it's not as good. So if I didn't want myself in there and I wanted like Tim Cook, what would we do? Tim Cook, Apple. I would go and grab an image of him, and let's say I want this one. Let's go ahead. I'm going to click it. And then I'm going to go and control click or right click. I'm going to save the image. Just going to save it in downloads. I will upload it. So if I go to downloads, just going to drag it in there. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to hit BG remover. And I'm going to put Tim Cook in here. Now I could put Steve Jobs. There are obviously a bunch of people that I could put here. I just used him since he's the current CEO. But position now, so remember how I talked about moving everything. If I want him basically right behind this text, but in front of the chart, all I have to do is drag him right in between. But now we have this apple here. This is grouped together. So let's say I want this smaller now. And I just want it to be kind of like over here. I can do that. Now what I want to bear in mind is, gotta move myself again. So actually I'll show you here. So I want to bear in mind that and I'm just doing this to show you something. So if I want to grab a shape, by the way, I can just type in rectangle, I can type in square, and then I can see that this is a quick add. I'm going to add this square just to show you. Basically, I wouldn't put anything in this area of your thumbnail. I wouldn't put anything important because this is where it's going to show the timestamp. So for example, if I wanted to show the Apple logo down here, you can see that there's a little low overlap. This honestly is probably fine. It's probably up high enough, but you want to bear in mind that this is kind of like the unsafe zone in terms of if you want anything to be seen, don't put it there. So right now I've got Tim Cook, but you know that his image looks a little bit grainy. All right, so we have to fix that. So I can go to uploads and I can see this uploaded photo of him. I can also just click here and I can go to edit. Now, when I go to edit, this whole thing pops open. I can see all of these options. I could adjust the temperature, the tint, the lightness, so I can make it really bright. I'm just gonna go back to 0. I don't wanna do any of this manual adjustment here. If I scroll down and I go to effects, and you see where I've got like shadows, autofocus, blur, I could do face retouch. So if you were like, let's say it's you and it's a really bad photo and your pores are all over, you can do face retouch. I'm gonna go down to apps where I've got like Vectorify, Texture, Frame Maker. I wouldn't worry too much about those, but there's something called Image Upscaler over here. It's got a little picture of a magnifying glass over a butterfly. I'm gonna click that. And what I'm gonna do, so I have the image chosen. You can do 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, 16 times. I always go for 16 times. And then I hit upscale image. And this takes, 30 seconds or something like that. It doesn't take too long, but it's not instantaneous. But it's gonna upscale the image for us, so it's less pixelated. And this used to be kind of so-so, but now it's actually gotten really good. So highly recommend doing this if you have any grainy photos that you just wanna make a little clearer. And once that pops up, I'll show you what that says. So we showed, I'm gonna give myself little check-offs for what we did. Kind of showed shapes. So I didn't show all of the which fonts to use, but use ChatGPT if you see any fonts that look really good on other thumbnails. Just take a screenshot, pop it in ChatGPT, and ask what font it was. And then I did kind of go over Nano Banana. Definitely upload a screenshot of yourself. Tell it, basically, hey, can you use the photo I uploaded of myself and create several YouTube thumbnail ready images of me doing various poses, and then just do whatever poses you think makes sense. All right, let's go ahead and look almost upscaled. Okay, so now I don't know how well you can tell because it is somewhat hard. You can see in the upscaler and zooming in, it's still pretty hard, so you may not be able to tell that well. But you can tell it'll actually show you sliding this across the before and after. Now, frankly, I don't know if it's just the picture I took or the fact that I'm not on my big screen. I can't tell too much of a difference right here. I think I might slightly be, yeah, I can see something maybe. I'm just gonna hit replace. It's pretty much always gonna be better. Sometimes it's really, really obvious. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit because we don't need that much. All right. So, oh man, I gotta keep moving my head. There we go. All right. So interesting. It said it was successful and then it said it didn't work. All right, let's go back. Let's just do 8 times. Seems like it's being mean to me. All right, so while that goes through, I'm gonna come back here to our organization. So I didn't talk to you about charts. You can add charts. What I prefer, so let's say you do have hard data that you want. I would either take a screenshot of it or just use a generic chart that they have. No one's gonna look at your thumbnail and try to find the real charted data. So I want to go over that because it does have charts in there. You can like search for a chart and you can put in inputs for the X and Y axis and all that stuff or whatever if you're doing a pie chart or a graph. But yeah, I would not worry about that, frankly. And overall image composition. So look, I'm not a designer. And the ironic thing, and maybe it's because I'm not a designer, my thumbnails that perform the best are the least elaborate and to me look the shoddiest. So, all right, this is saying that it was successful. I cannot tell. To me, it looks like that failed to save. The upscaler usually works, so we're gonna move on just because that should be something that you don't have trouble with. I'm gonna say that maybe it's because I'm streaming right now. But in any case, so if you have everything in here, you've upscaled the image, you've gotten everything, you have this area that you're just not touching, and I'm gonna delete this rectangle, this square. You don't want to keep it there. That was just to help you visualize. So when you've got all that, like this would be a pretty good thumbnail. Like I said, it could be simpler. You could flat out not even have the chart, and that would be fine. I tend to think that having the logo works really well. And that's just based on what I've observed with my click-through rates, having the logo, if you're talking about a person, having an image of them. So for example, let's say I'm gonna duplicate this because I'm not sure what I want. Let's say I do want Tim Cook in here, but I also want myself in here. I can decrease the font size. I can do that just by dragging it. I can decrease this. This is still gonna be very, very visible. I mean, look, that's still very visible. I could have Tim Cook like that. Now he's centered. I could also have him over here. I can put this little apple thing here. I could even have myself in there. Let's put an image of me looking shocked at Tim Cook. So we'll go to folders, me, and it will just make me looking confused. So you can still have yourself in there. And we're going to reposition things. I'm going to go ahead and select that and let's just move it over. You'd still have yourself in there and have the main person. And let's say because this image, I'm confused and I'm in the foreground, he's in the background, which seems fine if I'm the one like talking about it. But look at how dark my face is. I want to make that a little bit lighter because I want this to show up better. It's just I'm in too much shadow. So I'm gonna go to edit. Sorry. So I'll go to edit. Let me move my dumb face so you can see. I'm gonna go to adjust. Now this is the case where I might want to change the temperature. I'm gonna go back to 0. If you double click over here, it'll go back to 0, by the way. So if I change the tint and I'm like, nope, just double click in the box and it'll go back to 0. But I do want it brighter. And now I look like I'm almost angelic because of how bright that is. And I want some contrast. So now it's gonna darken that side. So I wanna undo that contrast. Now it's less contrast and it's more even. I want it brighter. I can do all that sort of thing. I can add highlights, which just kind of like sharpens the, what I'm gonna say, the colors there. Shadows, whites, blacks. So if I wanted to really dark on that one side, if I wanted really light on that one side. So you can see all the things that you can do, and then you can also just hit reset if you don't like it, and it goes back to normal. And then if you hit Control Z, that'll undo it, and then you're back there. So you could have this exact thumbnail, and this would be pretty good. Think different, it has Tim Cook. If you wanted an even more recognizable picture, which honestly this would be probably far better, we could do Steve Jobs and do this picture, save image as, save it, upload it, and what am I going to do here? I am going to duplicate this again, because that is how I roll. And you see how much easier it is if I'm just constantly duplicating or creating something new that way instead of like starting from scratch. So in this case, I'm going to delete Tim Cook. Oops, I'm going to delete myself. That's accidental though. I'm going to delete Tim Cook, who is here. And I'm going to replace it with Steve Jobs, and I'm going to remove the background. And I'm going to upscale his photo just so we can see, because hopefully this one will work. And I'm going to, let's just remove myself from this one entirely. And this is a case study about Steve Jobs, let's say. So we're going to go to edit image. Now, hopefully the upscaler works here, because I want you to see how it actually is a really, really grainy image. So this would be perfect case study. Plus I had to go in like 2 minutes. All right, so let's just try it. Let's try 16 times. Fingers crossed. This might take, it says a few moments. I think it might take a minute. Let me see what else we're going through. So we showed the organization. I mentioned that before. What makes a good thumbnail? We've been talking about this throughout. It needs to stand out on either screen, light or dark. Should be easy to read from far away. So, and also very few words. Oh, perfect. This is our before and after. This is much more obvious. Yeah, you can see that. So yeah, that one's pretty obvious. Much, much cleaner. So we're gonna hit replace. Fingers crossed. Everything looks good. The error occurred again. I think it's because I'm streaming, because that doesn't usually happen. All right, so you might have to trust me for a second, but I think it's because I'm streaming. But what makes a good thumbnail stands out regardless of the background, whether it's white or black on YouTube's main page. And so again, let me refresh this. So you want it to stand out regardless, and you can see some of these do a really good job. Others not so much. And then we want to go to easy to read from far away, few words. Like I said, I like max 4. Really, I found that 2 or 3 is the sweet spot. And honestly, like if you can do 1 or 0, then that seems to work really well as well. It's just things change. So complex thumbnails aren't really it anymore. Excuse me there. So they add mystery or augment the title, but they don't repeat it. So the last thing you want is if our title is how Apple captured the market, you don't want to say Apple captured the market or how Apple captured the market. That makes no sense. Here you can say think different, and that implies that they capture the market by thinking differently, or it was something to do with their brand, their slogan, their culture. This has Steve Jobs holding up the iPhone, which implies something else, right? It implies that that's a huge part of the story. So we have all of these things that the watcher is actually pulling together, pulling out of the content themselves before they even watch the video. And it makes them think, oh, this is going to be about blah. Matches your video. So the hook, by the way, yeah, as soon as someone clicks, within the first, ideally, it says 30 to 45 seconds, really like 5 to 15 seconds, you want to confirm for the person who clicked that they're going to get what they expect out of the video. So the thumbnail and the title should match what's going on in that hook. So if they click this video, that's, you know, how Apple cornered the market, captured the market, and it says think different, you want to immediately say something along the lines of Apple's dominated the market for 20 years through 3 principles or something like that, and confirm to them that the title and thumbnail, basically that's the promise, is going to be delivered. And then, honestly, again, simple is better and crappy looking. I've spent so much time on thumbnails, and you'll see, like, look at how many I did just for this demonstration. I just did like 4 iterations, and you can see how we progressed. I'll sometimes do like 10 different iterations of a thumbnail, just really rapid fire like this. And by the time I go through it, I have some like fancier ones, and then I usually end up stripping things out and making them simpler. So I found that my crappiest thumbnails, what I would consider my crappiest thumbnails, often outperform the better ones. But simple is going to be key. And do not worry if you don't know how to do a ton of like cool effects in Canva. This stuff is all you need. I can promise you that. You can do more than enough just by having the basis in Canva that we've just given you. So that I've just given you. So there you go. Go run with it. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, if there's anything else that's helpful, and enjoy. Like I said, I really wish that I had an affiliate link for Canva. I do not. Just go sign up for it though. It is totally worth it. If this is something that you do, far more worth it to spend 15 bucks a month or whatever on Canva and do it yourself than hire someone to do this stuff for you. You can handle it, trust me. All right, y'all have a good one. Really appreciate you joining.